Yo, what's up, man? Welcome to today's edition of the Orangebloods Modcast here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson to my right, Jason Sukumel, Alex Dunlap. We're talking Texas football. Do us a solid. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, let some people know about it, share it on your socials. And oh, by the way, make sure you go check out our friends Dead Soxy at deadsoxy.com. Take advantage of their 30% off discount that they afford if you use the promo code Orangebloods. They're great socks. They're beautiful to look at. They're innovative. They've got it's like the Rolls Royce of socks, and all of us have them. We all love to wear them. And just checking out all the various different styles that they have is a lot of fun if you're into your clothing, certainly. Deadsoxy.com. Again, use that promo code Orangebloods, 30% off. It's that simple. Fellas, I mentioned this. Alex, you missed it. But right before we came on, we were chit-chatting about today's show and kind of what the center of the conversation is going to be. And the very first thing I'm going to ask you guys today, what's your record for this team as we sit here in May? As things currently stand, Vegas has the Longhorns at a over and under at 9.5 with wins and losses. And I saw somebody today merge all of the various wins and losses that Vegas has set up for all the teams in the country. And if you created a standings based on win totals, the Longhorns would be in the top 10. So I'm just kind of curious where all of our heads are, given that 24/7 yesterday projected the Longhorns to make the playoff. And I think to play Ohio State in a playoff game. There's just a lot of conversation about this Texas team. It's upside where it belongs in the rankings. And I figured since we're still like a little bit less than 4 months away from the start of the season, which actually sounds like it's right around the corner, which is kind of exciting. I wondered kind of where all our heads are with this football team, given that it finished 8-5 a year ago and wasn't one of the best teams in the country. Jason, I'll come to you first. You're Mr. Conservative. You're Mr. Hold on and wait a minute. And so I'll let you go first with regards to where your head is. Where's your head?
So 9.5 was the over and under that you saw?
Yes.
I feel like those lines as they relate to the Texas Longhorns are always inflated because I don't know if they just think the Texas fan base is always overconfident or people are always going to – I just feel like that – I think last year's was probably, 8.5 or 9. I mean, those numbers are always so high for Texas. I think usually overinflated. Honestly, Catch, I think that's probably about right this year, though. And I'm looking at the schedule. I'm taking probably the over on that. If you look at the schedule, I think the only game that Texas will be underdogs in would be Alabama. I'm assuming Texas will be favored over Oklahoma. K-State, TCU, Texas Tech are all formidable opponents. But
I saw the line for Alabama is Alabama minus 7.5.
Yeah, like right at a touchdown. Yeah. So, listen, look, if I'm just going down the list, let's say they lose at Alabama, although I think that's a very winnable game with Alabama's quarterback situation. But I'll just play the numbers and say they lose at Alabama. I think they're favored in every other game. Now, does that mean they're going to win every other game? No, probably not. I think they're going to stumble somewhere. Maybe Texas Tech at home, at TCU, Kansas State. I hate to suggest it, but possibly Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma will be a pretty good football team this year. So, if I'm just kind of playing the numbers, I don't know what game I would predict them to lose. I need to dig in a little bit more on some of these other opponents. And of course you got BYU and at Houston this year too, but two new opponents. But I'm thinking, man, 10 wins seems very, very reasonable expectation for me for this team to win 10 wins. So if that line's at 9.5, I think Texas goes 10-2. I just don't know where those two losses would come from.
Well, I can see who doesn't read my columns. So thanks a lot, Jason, because I posted the lines of like 6 or 7 things on Sunday.
I just skimmed through them, yeah.
No, you didn't see it. You shit because I literally outlined it in my column where Texas, obviously Alabama is at the -7.
That's
Baylor.
the only one I really paid attention to onward, but yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
No.
Baylor's at Texas is -8 at Baylor, -17 at Kansas, -5.5 Oklahoma, 9.5 versus K-State, 6 versus TCU. Those are some of the early lines that are available.
And let's be honest. I mean, those early lines those will be nowhere near reflective of where they'll be in September and October. But yeah, if you're just looking at it now, I mean, realistically, you could say 11-1 and with a straight face, and I'm not going to say 12-0, but I think that Alabama game's a very winnable game on the road against Alabama.
Alex, I got caught in between just then. I was looking at Anwar.
Anwar kind of
and I said Alex, and I just confused myself.
So, were you going to Anwar, or were you going to me?
No,
I was going to you, but I was looking at Anwar.
Okay. Hey, maybe y'all can, or someone in the chat, or you guys can help me. So Jalen Milroe's not going to be the Alabama quarterback. Like, what happened with Milroe?
I think he's in a bad.
They don't have a starting quarterback yet.
He's just average.
But he's still there.
He's there, yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
He'd start at quarterback today if they had a game.
I'll always be a little bit scared of that guy. Let's see. All right, so you just look at so Rice, that's a win. Alabama, let's just say it's a loss. Wyoming win. Baylor, Baylor lost a lot of good players. Win. Kansas, I would say a win. Oklahoma, probably a win. Houston, win. BYU? How did it go over my head that Texas is playing BYU this year at home?
All of the new schools are in the Big 12.
Okay. So that's it. Okay, so BYU.
Houston wasn't shocking, but BYU was.
Houston seems like one of those ones that maybe, like, Houston pops up on the schedule every now and then. BYU.
I love that Jason twisted the dagger. Like, we were all kind of thinking it, but
yeah, man, I'm already on to the SEC, boys. I don't care about this crappy Big 12. I couldn't even tell you what schools got added. Who else got added? Was it Cincinnati?
Yes. Yeah. And Central Florida.
Why do I even write? Why do I even write? You guys are reading shit that I write. I'm so insulted today.
What a crap conference. TC, dude, in TC, I would generally worry about TCU. But, Jesus, they lost their quarterback. They lost Quentin Johnston. They lost Steve Avila, who's like a second-round draft pick. Who else? Kendre Miller, Dylan Horton.
But I've seen like a lot of top 25s that
Darius Davis.
Yeah, TCU still on most top 25 lists.
I think D Winners went to D Winners went to the 49ers. There was another. How many guys
they did pretty well in the portal. Yeah. I think a lot of the optimism on TCU is that they think they've got a starting quarterback in place. The guy that was going to start over Duggan actually did start over Duggan, if I'm not mistaken, in the first game of the season. And then he got hurt. Duggan came in and never gave it up.
Iowa State lost a lump, lose Will McDonald, Xavier Hutchinson, basically the two guys you worry about the most. Texas Tech, dude, I'd say 10 wins because if they lose to Alabama and that they're going to stub their toe somewhere, right? Somewhere along the way. That's just what's going to happen. But I think that means 10 wins if we're just talking about the regular season total.
Onward?
Yeah, I'm taking 10 just to be conservative, with it. But, I think, like I said, I've been predicting the fall of Alabama for a little bit. And, Jalen Monroe, I saw him versus A&M, and maybe that's just a low, bad game. But he did throw 3 interceptions versus A&M last season. After watching that Alabama spring game, there was no parts of me that walked away thinking to myself, like, oh, my God, they've got this whole thing going. So, it's going to be on the road. So just because it's going to be on the road, hostile environment, that might be, something that's going to, be a little tricky, but it's still a very winnable game for me for Texas. And I see Texas, probably being the favorites, as we point out in just about every other game. I think Texas will be more stacked with talent than every team that they face this season. I like the 2 deep on both sides of the ball. I'm giving them the 2 just because, I don't want to go fully crazy. But 10-2 seems very reasonable to me.
think that the Longhorns don't have a team on this schedule that they need to fear, right? So really, you get beyond the Alabama game, and there's not a game that jumps out at you as, oh, that's the one that's the second loss. And then, there's just that doesn't exist on the schedule. I think the thing that I think about with this Texas team, and look, you guys, if you think I'm just flat out wrong or off base, I'd love to hear it. I think the thing that jumps out at me is this is still a team that has to learn how to win consistently. It's not an easy thing to do to say we're going to be very good every week and win all of our games. This is a team that will look good for, at least historically, and even under Sarkisian, it's a team that a couple of games go by and you think that they've made some strides and they've turned a corner potentially, and then Oklahoma State happens or the Texas Tech game happens, or I think we thought that Texas Tech performance, quite frankly, they would have put that kind of performance behind them after playing as well as they did against Alabama and then beating probably at least as good of a team as Texas Tech and UTSA, and then to go on the road and lose it and really give that game away in the way that they did. They've got to start – they have to learn to not do that. They have to learn to consistently play well on the road. They beat Kansas State at the end of the year, and we've kind of forgotten that up until that game, they hadn't won any games on the road at all under Sarkisian. So it's hard for me, just my brain, it's hard for me to just give them the benefit of the doubt in all of these Big 12 road games, because that would be very unlike what we've seen under Sarkisian's teams at Texas. I worry about the Big 12 screw job. I feel like there will be a game somewhere this season where both Texas and Oklahoma get a screw job. And does it cause them to lose? Remains to be seen. But will there be a game where Texas gets called for 17 penalties?
Amsterdam catch. I can already see it.
I mean, I was at Grant Taft's last game in the Southwest Conference when he was at Baylor, and they were marking balls 5 yards. Everything was awful in that game in the name of maybe that can't happen in 2023 with TV and everything else, but that Oklahoma State game, Anwar, with Charlie Strong sticks out in my mind, where a game is over and there are literally 17 calls that you can go back and go, what the hell just happened?
Is that the one where he bumped into the ref?
The ref bumped into him.
Charlie
The ref bumped into him.
Whatever. Yeah, there was a bumping of people involving Charlie Strong and a ref.
Right.
I literally had to write an article kind of calling out what happened that day, and I was like a hero on the website because there was really this feeling that we got screwed. And then the other two elements of this. Steve Sarkisian has to be better. He's not been a head coach at Texas where I think his game management between second and fourth quarters is really ever as good as his game management in the first quarter. I mean, this is a guy that's never really won 9 or 10 games in a season. He has to elevate his performance as a coach.
Whoa.
Yes.
Send some of that our way, kid.
I'm done for the show. And then the final thing is Quinn Ewers is being given a lot of benefit of the doubt. In his last 4 performances against ranked teams, he has a combined efficiency rating of 97.7. Case McCoy's career quarterback efficiency was 108.
Oh, man. That's
so you add all of this stuff up together, and I don't know. I'm on the fence. 9.5 is kind of a perfect number for me. I think, as I said yesterday with Anwar, I'll probably pick this team to win the Big 12. That means I think 9-3 is probably the minimum record to get you into the Big 12 championship game. That would be probably 2 losses in conference play. I think they're going to get in. I think 9.5 is kind of a perfect number. I think I'm like Jason. I lean towards 10. But I do have all of these things running around in my head that are like, man, if they're going to do that, all of these things really have to swing the way of the Longhorns. They got to play better on the road. They got to play better week to week. Sarkisian's got to be better. Ewers has to really elevate his play. They just week in and week out have to be a better football team, kind of giving them some benefit of the doubt and even admitting I will probably pick them to win the Big 12. Anybody response to any of that?
We're on the same page. I mean, they're going to play some TCU last year played in competitive games more often than not. I mean, Texas is going to be in a lot of one-score games. I think they're on paper.
Yeah,
they're going to lose a game they probably shouldn't on paper, but most teams do. Most teams have those, one or two of those games where they play down to their opponent or they're just not sharp. But you're right, Ketch. This is a program that has to prove it can consistently win those kind of close games to get to that 10-win total and take those next steps. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm, drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, but I'm giving them, like you said, I'm usually the guy that's a slow down, but I'm giving them a little bit more benefit of the doubt. I think the experience at quarterback and offensive line, their skill talent, I think it's going to be really good, obviously. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I think they'll stumble once where they probably shouldn't. But I think they do find a way to win those one-score ball games and get 10 wins.
Well, for me, there's like a couple of things as far as, because you threw a lot out there. As far as the screw job is concerned, don't forget there was an officiating crew last year that didn't call a penalty against a Texas opponent in Oklahoma State and Baylor. Both games, the other team never was penalized. So
that's what I'm saying.
So the portion of that is there, and that's true. The thing is, I can't remember. I didn't know which McCoy you compared Quinn to, but for a fair comparison, if you go to Colt, his passer rating as a sophomore was 139.2. Quinn's
he wasn't good.
Yeah, Quinn's was 132.6. And Colt threw 22 interceptions in 22 touchdowns and 18 interceptions that year. Quinn threw 15 and 6 last year. So, I mean, we're talking about 12 more interceptions than Quinn did than he did in his first season as a starter. So, there is then, of course, there's the legend of Colt McCoy. So there is a possibility that a young quarterback can improve and get better and be something special. So just for that comparison's sake.
But if you're going to use Colt didn't become a good quarterback until his third season as a starter.
He was pretty good his freshman year. Wasn't he a Heisman finalist his freshman year?
Well, I think a lot of people felt like he got by on smoke and mirrors. There were times that season where he was throwing the ball into the end zone at nobody in particular, and Jermichael Finley would come down with it. And, he caught a lot of breaks that season right up until the part where his body broke in half at Kansas State. And throw him on the field against A&M, and we all know that was the infamous Cart McCoy game where Michael Bennett slams him into the ground.
I believe that they called it the Cart. I believe that they called it the Cart McCry game.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the Aggies called it. Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen that reference, so I'll lean into Alex's memory of that. But ultimately, McCoy regressed to the mean of where he really was as a player, as a sophomore. And by the end of his sophomore year, there were a lot of people that weren't sure whether or not he should even be the starter. Texas didn't really have anybody because at that point, I don't mean to go on a dissertation of Colt McCoy's career, but at that point, Jevin Snead transferred. See, we're talking about G.J. Kinney and a young and I think Kinney was a freshman then, and Sherrod Harris would have been a second year player. So it was kind of only Colt McCoy to go to. But the confidence for McCoy going into his third season was iffy at best. Sorry.
But no, I mean, two guys that were, been on campus for 2 years. So, just as a comparison.
Anwar, I wonder, would this team be better if we were all doubting them? Like, I think one of the things, as Jason was talking about, he's usually the hold up guy, the hold on guy, and then or slow down. And even Jason is kind of giving some benefit of the doubt. I somewhat think about that 1990 team, right? The Shock the Nation tour. It feels like this is the type of team that should be on a Shock the Nation tour. They go 8-5, and nobody kind of believes in them, and they go to Alabama and they win that game, and now suddenly everybody's paying attention to them. But they're getting the benefit of the doubt beforehand. It really takes the underdog, us against the world kind of mentality away from them and puts them in a position where, I don't know, historically this team doesn't do well when people start patting them on the back.
Well, and for me, it's the same thing we've been talking about, at least I've written about it. We've talked about it on the Modcast. Just at what point do you just say, all right, now's the time to go. Like, they got the players, they got the roster. Like, we've examined every portion of this roster. People are talking in the chat about how they're unproven at running back and all the rest. And what I'd say to that is, like, if that's the one thing if you point at running backs and inside linebackers is where you need the help, the two positions on the football field that are the easiest to get, replacement level players at. Clearly you're not going to get a replacement level of a Bijan Robinson, maybe not even a Roschon Johnson, right? But those are positions where you can go get guys to play their roles and not be ancillary to what you do schematically, but be ancillary to some of the other players that are some of the big time play breakers where you just ask these guys to do their jobs, right? There's some of these other guys that you need to do more than ask them to do their jobs. They need to go out. They need to have this superhuman skills, and they have those guys at most of the key positions that we care about. So, to me, the whole running back thing doesn't matter. What was C.J. Baxter, the second best running back in the nation last year, or something like that, as a recruit? Jonathan Brooks, Jaden Blue, both 4-star guys that people have always been high on. It's like it is. I mean, there might not be a Bijan, but they have the depth there that a lot of teams in the Big 12, I'm sure, would gladly trade their running back room for the one that Texas has. So, to me, that's not an excuse. The inside linebacker, maybe slight lack of depth, isn't an excuse. There are no excuses for that. Like, if this team loses, it's going to be because they weren't coached up right and the personnel wasn't developed in the way that they'd clearly hoped.
Let's put a ribbon and bow on this piece of the conversation. We're all 10-2 as of today, right? Like, even I may be on the fence, but an Onward did this to me yesterday. If someone had all of my money, it's a very interesting scenario he came up with. Someone has charged my bank account, and I have to bet my life, savings, checking, everything on one of these records. At the moment, we're all at 10-2, right?
Oh man, the whole life savings things makes anything hard.
No, it was. I was like, oh God.
I guess I was 10. It would be 10-2 or 9-3 for me, man, and that's why they put the odds right there at 9-5. I mean, that's right where they put the odds at 9.5.
I'd rather go to the roulette and just go red or black with mine.
Well, at least you get the stay of execution. Roulette would either be over really quick in a good or bad way. At least with the season, boy, it'd make those extra points very difficult to kind of sit through. All right, real quick. So anybody parting before we move on to like another topic? Anybody have any last comments on this chapter of the Modcast? Going once, going twice. Sold American. Okay, let's go into a couple super chat questions. I want to encourage everybody, get your super chat questions in. I will do my best to make sure that we get to these as early as possible. Mike, with the very first super chat question of the day, Onward, I'll go to you on this. Any update on how Nayor is doing? Chances of him being ready week uno?
The last time I checked on it, it's a good one. The last time I checked on it, all of that was going well. The goal was still to have him ready toward, at some point in the summer, but definitely towards training camp is concerned. So, I want to say I asked about that towards the end of the spring. I checked in and asked about that. So, Obviously the guys are on break at this moment. They come back after Memorial Day, and I'll get, a little bit more on that. But the goal was never for him to play this spring. I was told that before spring got started, that was just off the table. The goal is just to have him ready for week 1. That's the plan. And I haven't heard any setbacks that will prevent that from happening.
I'll just throw in too, just from what my own eyeballs have seen of him, just during the time that we've been allowed at practices. I mean, he goes out there and he stretches and he does the stuff like that. Then he goes off to the side, but he's running. He can cut. He's not with the super hurt guys. He's out there. He's kind of running. He's cutting. He's doing some things. He's doing the resistance work and stuff like that. So, I would imagine just that to me would say that the timeline's probably right about where we would expect it to be, right at that 11 and a half, 12-month mark for the recovery for that kind of injury last year during camp.
Got one from Jay the Activist. Let's be real. This team is 8 wins at best. Tell them catch. Oh, hey, hold on. I can't co-sign on 8. God, I hope you're wrong. Why do we trust Quinn or that defense? No good running backs either. Damn, Jay.
Somebody peed in your cornflakes, Jay. What's going on?
Jay!
I think I addressed the no good running backs thing earlier. They have good running backs. They just don't have Bijan. It's like, how are you going to compare any, you lose Bijan, it's obviously going to hurt, but these guys are not bad. People were dancing in the streets when every single one of these guys committed to Texas. So, now they're going to have their opportunity.
Well, it's funny. The running back
conversation, right? 8 would be a colossal disappointment in failure, I would guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not on board with that one, Jay. Sorry.
That would either be – that would just – you're not playing in the Big 12 championship game at 8-4. So –
very unlikely.
Right? Jay, at best, this team could have won almost all of its games last season, outside of maybe the Washington game where at the end – that really felt like Washington just beat Texas, but and TCU as well. They didn't really score until that last defensive touchdown 2 minutes to go in the game. I do want to, on the running back thing, I think one of the interesting pieces of that discussion, and it weaves in with the Quinn discussion, is that they won't be as good at running back this year, which means you would expect Quinn and the passing game that need to pick up the slack a little bit. It's kind of interesting to recall last season where they were, that was one of the best running back duos in the history of the program. I haven't given it any thought whatsoever, but if we were to rank running back duos or running back groups in the history of the program, the Ricky, Priest-Holmes, Sean Mitchell backfield is the only one that just absolutely jumps to mind. I guess in modern years, Cedric Benson and Selvin Young, that 2005, Jamal, Ramonce Taylor, Selvin Young. They've had good backfields, but last year's was top shelf. It created a scenario where we talked about through all of last season, when you get to the fourth quarter, let those running backs carry the day. They didn't do it against Oklahoma State. They had really Quinn, I think he threw it 49 times that game. Maybe even cracked 50. I can't remember. But then they play the Baylor game, and then they just run the ball out. And it was as if Sark learned from the Oklahoma State game into the Baylor game. I don't know that will be an option this year. I think when he says about the trust level with Quinn, I don't know how to completely talk about that because I don't know how he can earn trust until he does it in the season. But over the 12 games this season on WAR, I do feel like the responsibility will be Quinn's this season, even more than it was a year ago, in a year where Sarkisian, you go back and look at those ranked game performances, other than there was one where maybe the Kansas State game, he threw it like 24 times. But those other games against ranked teams, he threw the ball up over 40 times per game. And I think we'll probably see more of that this year. And it'll be about getting more out of those 40 throws than they were able to get a year ago.
I don't want to overreact to what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say with all due respect, to the running backs.
I'm sorry, I saw Barry.
With all due respect, what happened? What did Barry say?
There.
It's on the screen.
Oh, okay. With all due respect to running backs, it's overrated. Like it's very overrated at this point. It's about the quarterback. You had Bijan and Roshan. Yeah, how do you replace those guys? Like, in all due respect, and I'm not saying these guys weren't talented or weren't good. Texas finished 8-4. We saw Deontay Foreman rush for 2,000 yards in a season. Texas finished 5-7. You guys saw Ricky Williams rush for nearly 2,000 yards in 97, and that was a 4-win team.
Yep.
So, I hear what we're saying about the running backs. How do you replace the running backs? What do you do about the running backs? It's about making sure your quarterback can get the job done, because we've seen a lot of high-level, elite-level running backs here at Texas, and it not yield, a lot of results. I'm not saying you haven't seen good running backs, but the whole, how do you replace Beach? No, to Alex, I think what Alex is saying is great, and I think it's a great point. You have good running backs, and that's what you probably need is a good running back. You need an elite quarterback, and as long as if you have an elite quarterback that you can rely on, that's going to be the thing that leads you over the top. So for me, it's about, to your point, kind of circle all back in. Quinn, he's got the weapons. He's got the A.D. Mitchells, Xavier Worthies. He's got the Jatavian Sanders of the world. So he's got enough weapons to play with. Jonte Cook, the list is pretty long at this point. He's got enough to work with, and I think he's the guy that you have to lean on to say he's got to win you the games in the fourth quarter, more so than any of the running backs.
I will say, Jay, I feel you on this.
Yeah, he makes an okay point here. I mean, because that's the main thing in my brain, because he asked why you should drink the Kool-Aid when they never he's basically saying why give him the benefit of the doubt, catch, and that's the thing you and I think Jason, we all struggle with it. We're just like, man, we're chalking this thing up for 10 wins. Here we go. We're giving them the benefit of the doubt whenever they don't really deserve it based on what we've seen thus far with Sark at Texas. But to me, I'm sure you had the point that you were going to make, but it makes perfect sense to me. This way of thinking. What I'm saying is I've overcome this way of thinking with my, my examination of the roster and the fact that as we discussed, it's really hard to poke holes in it. Didn't Urban Meyer say something the other week about having one of the best rosters in college football?
The best.
Mm-hmm.
The best. So,
which is cockamamie.
Right. But it goes to show that when people think about this stuff, and Urban Meyer, say what you will about him. I mean, he's a serious person. I wouldn't consider him unserious.
He's a troll.
Right.
Everything is made with what does this do for him in mind? I'm convinced he still thinks the Texas job looks a lot better based on the recruiting of Steve Sarkisian. So
yeah.
Set that guy up to fail and swoop in and rebuild your brand.
But here's the thing. Can I add in on the Jay thing? I mean, and I would just say this, Jay, Texas won 8 games last year. I don't feel like it's taken a huge step to say, use that phone.
House phone. That thing never rings unless we're on the air.
Yeah. That thing, I don't think it's a huge leap to say you think Texas could be 2 wins better than they were last season. I don't feel like we're stretching that far to say 2 wins. And I know, look, as many games as Texas could have won last year, they could have lost. So I get how that works, but they're a field goal away, a 20-yard field goal away from beating a team like an Alabama. There's certain things I can talk myself into and saying there's enough things, and you're talking about doing this and getting 8 wins with basically one receiver who was a deep threat, and then Texas didn't really even have a deep threat, and you feel like they have more now. So in any case, I don't think it's a huge stretch for me, Jay.
One more super chat that we've got. You guys keep sending them in, though. We'll keep taking them. Tyler says, when is the last time Texas has retained an OC-DC 3 years in a row? The DC would be Vance, right? And then before that, Muschamp in 2008 through 2010.
Todd Orlando was here for 3 seasons, wasn't he? And then the last year is when they brought in Chris Ash.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You are correct. Offensive coordinator.
Ew.
When's
That one's
the last
tougher.
time they did both though?
Oh.
Both at the same time. Like,
I mean, you have to go back to
Well,
2010,
Greg Davis and
Yeah.
from 2008 to 2010.
Muschamp.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because remember in 2010, that was, Muschamp was a head coach in waiting, and he hadn't taken that Florida job just yet.
It's also tough, Jason, because kind of Sark is kind of the OC. So,
Yeah.
it's like the head coach, really,
Yeah.
it's kind of a tough one, even though I know Kyle Flood has it in title.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we had one more. No, I think Jay, I'm trying to pull it up. Someone keeps on. Jay just wanted to say, keep receipts. I have no issue being wrong. I want to be. I just can't buy in at the moment.
Let's just keep talking. Jay keeps sending in that money.
Shit, by like 2:00, Jay would have dropped like 500.
They keep telling Jay to get out of here. We're like, stick around, Jay.
At this point, it's been like a lap dance. Like $15, $20 so far. So Jay, you're good. You spent $20 or $15 over 30 minutes as opposed to $20 in 3 minutes. So there you go.
Jay, I'd rather die believing something will happen than live admitting that it won't.
The senior yearbook quote right there. Trip, buy or sell. Texas beats Bama, but turns around and loses a trap game to Wyoming.
Someone paid
sell that.
Someone paid $4.99 for that, huh?
Oh.
Well, we would have ignored it actually. To be fair, we would have ignored it if he didn't put a super chat on it. So to be fair, it is a good way to get an answer.
I don't know anything about Wyoming. If Alabama was at home and Wyoming was on the road, and maybe Wyoming was a fairly decent, then I would be like, okay, that makes a little bit of sense, a trap game. But coming back home to face Wyoming in Austin, I don't see Texas stumbling in that game. Again, I don't know. Wyoming may be a competitive team in whatever conference they're in. I don't know, but I mean, I don't see that being a trap game, regardless of what happens.
I think the better question is, would that make for the worst meltdown in Orangebloods history?
No.
It'd be up there. I'm going to be the worst, but yeah.
It's not like Red Banquet level, but it'd be.
It would be horrible, Ketchum. It would be. We wouldn't get. We would have to like assign shifts and Slack. Like people would have to be up like from like the 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. shift to make sure that the board just didn't burn down.
For how many days?
It probably go on for the rest of the week. Like, geez.
I think the Trip. I'm going to save Trip's question though. Although I would contend he's got his $5 worth because I think the conversation since the question it's entertained me at least. As I was reading the sentence, if that question is buy or sell, Texas beats Bama, but turns around and loses a game later in the season that it shouldn't, I would buy.
Me too.
Well, I don't know that I'm quite ready to say that Texas beats Bama, but I do. I am with everybody that thinks that's a very winnable game. At least Texas knows who its quarterback is going to be. Bama goes into August not really knowing. So, and Texas gets them early. So you don't have to twist my arm. As I think the biggest doubter of this team right now, the Bama game is not scary. Let's see. Jarrett with another super chat question. Hey, y'all, since we're on the topic, how do you see the running back depth chart pan out? Alex, I'll go to you on this. I want to hear what you have to say. Does Keelan make a push for RB1? Where would Savion Red fall?
This is one of the tougher things. It's a good question because Savion Red and Keelan Robinson, from what we've seen out of him, what we've seen out of Keelan so far, Red and Keelan look to me very redundant players. And I think that Savion Red actually looks better. The whole RB1 thing, we've seen what a massive failure that was in the bowl game. It simply can't happen. So he will not make a push to be RB1. I think Savion Red is going to if I had to put money down on it, I would say that Savion Red has a higher snap percentage than Keelan does next season. just because they've talked so much about how they're going to use him. I did notice. What's he on the is he on the roster at 215? I noticed he looks bigger than he's bigger. He's bulkier. He can run between the tackles. But they also talk about all the ways they can use him on screens, bubbles, stuff like that. You saw in the spring game, I think he threw like 2 different balls. They tried to get him back there as some kind of wildcatty quarterback a couple times. So I think that he'll be more, but both those guys to me feel like complementary type of pieces. They feel like they can move around. They can keep in there to not allow the defense to substitute out, right? They can put those guys in the slot. The defense can't sub whenever they don't make the sub. So I would say that's how I see those 2 guys. And with the other 3, I guess I'd probably put it at like I don't know. It's hard, man. I think I just hedge right now and say like 40% Jonathan Brooks, 30% Baxter, 30% Blue. But that would be so unlike what we've seen out of Sark so far. Granted, he's had one elite superstar running back and one super, super entrenched, really good backup. But if you go back through his entire career, he always has these 1,000-yard rushers. I wonder if one of those guys is just going to be the guy who he eventually leans into. And if we're looking at the pure talent for the guy who you're eventually going to lean into, to me, from what I've seen out of CJ Baxter, I mean, I know he's only going to be a freshman, but from a pure talent perspective, if talent wins out, I think I lean him. But, Brooks has looked good in the past. We know that Jaden Blue was a lot of talk at camp. So it's a really tough question to answer. It's a good question. I would say if I had to say it right now, I'd say 10% of total snaps, maybe 15% of total snaps between Keelan and Red. I said 30, 40, but that doesn't. So then it would be 85% left over. So maybe 25, 20, and 40. 40% Brooks, 25% Baxter, 20% Blue, 15% mixed between Keelan and Red.
That just made my head hurt, Alex.
The only thing I would throw in there, Alex, I wouldn't completely sleep. Not Keelan as RB1, but I'm convinced that the last time this team played a football game, this team made a mini commitment to Keelan to keep him out of the portal as a grad transfer potentially. Like, his usage made 0 sense. It seemed to serve the purpose of letting Keelan know that going into next year, he was going to be more heavily in the mix based on how he was used in that game. He did lead the running back position in receptions last year with 25, I think. And I think Bijan was second with 24. So I think he will come back into the team and be ahead of Savion Red in the depth chart at that position. It will be interesting to see at the end of August, September, October, if Savion takes over that role. I think it's possible.
How many touches can you get? How many touches can you get in that, give to that role in total? And those 2 guys are the same. Keelan and Red are going to play the same thing. It's like,
I'm just telling you, this coaching staff really likes Keelan Robinson.
Well, but don't they really like A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy and J.T. Sanders and Jordan Whittington? And it's like there's not. I'm
only talking about in this niche role that he kind of had a year ago. I think the real I think you nailed probably how the percentages play out among the top backs. I think the real interesting question is, in this niche role that Keelan Robinson played a year ago and that Savion Red kind of specialized in the spring while Keelan wasn't playing. And I think, like you said, they used him a little bit as kind of a wildcatty guy that can even throw the ball. Like, he's got a little bit more of a diverse skill set than Keelan Robinson, but is nowhere near the breakaway threat with the ball in his hands that Keelan Robinson. They are different guys to a certain extent. I don't personally have a complete feel for how those guys will get their breadcrumbs in the offense, because like you said, there's a million guys with mouths to feed, including Jatavion Sanders, who has to get more targets in the passing game, and at times he did when he was kind of marginalized and mitigated in this offense. So, but I don't completely dismiss Keelan Robinson as a non-factor in the run game.
I think that's why it's a good question there from Jareth M. It's a tough one to answer.
Anybody else? We can move on if anybody else has any more running back thoughts. I don't see anybody itching to make a comment. All right.
No, I agree with Alex. It's almost impossible to answer coming out of the spring. I'll just say I don't know that anybody took, quote unquote, the bull by the horns. I still think Jonathan Brooks might be the lead back. But I don't really, I'm like Alex, man, I don't know what to expect. I just, based on what I saw in the spring game, I didn't see anything from one of those guys like, okay, that guy has got all the momentum coming out of spring. People forget Jonathan Brooks is really, really good when he's healthy. People inside the Texas staff, really high on him. They have been ever since he was a recruit. Thought he was the number one back in the country. I had one person tell me when he was in high school. I still think it might be Jonathan Brooks being the main guy, and then the other carries get divided up behind him. But if CJ Baxter is your starter game one, that wouldn't shock me either. I mean, it's a tough one to call.
Should be noted for the record that Baxter's really the SART guy amongst all these people, right? I mean, if we were to pick one guy that it would behoove the program to have take off, if you want to recruit future 5-star running backs, point them to your current 5-star running back and say, hey, the moment you show up, look at CJ Baxter. You've got a chance to play right away, to get heavy snaps. And I think as the season goes along, he's a guy that's going to be harder to keep off the field in November than September. And onward, that might be the ace up the sleeve for this team this season, is that they've got so many young guys. They should be a better football team in November than they are in September. And a year ago, the thing that I said I wanted to see from this team was be better in September than they were in August, be better in October than they were in September, be better in November than they were in October. They didn't do that a year ago. But you can see with so many young guys, I mean, I can close my eyes and imagine the light switch coming on for CJ Baxter in week 6. And then suddenly the offense takes a step up from whatever it's been prior, which may still be really good, but it even elevates even more. Maybe a Jonte Cook does the same thing. Maybe it's week 8, and you haven't seen much of Jonte Cook. And then suddenly, hey, there's a 40-yard touchdown catch. Where'd that come from? And suddenly you start to see a little bit more of him integrated. A.D. Mitchell, I think, is a guy that's should be better in October than September. This is a team that should be better at the end of the season.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is why we can wrap our heads around 10 wins just because of the talent and the depth. It was interesting when I was listening to like Jason and Alex, all you guys talking about the running back room and the depth there. Like, none of us were just saying like these guys are suck and someone's got to win it by default. Everyone was kind of like these guys are good and just trying to figure out who's the guy that you put in there. You talked about last year everything kind of falls apart from an offensive standpoint when Isaiah Nayer gets injured. Like it's just they don't have any deep threat after that point. And then all of a sudden you looked at it now and you're like, if an injury happens in that room, knock on wood, you look at it and say, man, you feel pretty good about the weapons that are there, whether it's the AD Mitchells, like I said, Xavier's, Jonte, who you just mentioned, Jordan Winston. You feel pretty good about all of that. You feel pretty good about the offensive line. Where you have an injury to Cole Hudson in this spring, and then you got other guys who are getting worked in, and then all of a sudden there's the emergence of a Cam Williams.
Yeah.
And you're saying to yourself, oh, okay, man, like, okay, cool. Like nowadays you may get hurt, you may lose your job, and so there's talent that's there. There's a lot on both sides of the ball. I mean, I can go down the whole list, but I think this is a team from that one. Sarkis said he likes it. He says he feels comfortable with it. I think he's got what he needs there. And then this is a team that should technically be getting better because at the end of the day, if you have a guy that's not producing, I feel like there's finally guys behind you that can probably come in and take your job and do better.
Let's jump into parting shots. I don't see any other super chat questions. Anybody going once, going twice? If somebody jumps in with a super chat, maybe we will we'll break into that. But I like where the conversation's been. I didn't freeze, did I? Benji says
no.
Okay.
You were just holding very still.
That's what they say about me. Alex, you got a party shot for us today?
Yeah, man, bring the rain, please. All of it. I've been seeing there's rain chances. There's rain chances all week, dude. They started on like Saturday night, and like I didn't get any rain in my house. We've been getting some of this rain, but I keep looking at the radar. It looks like it's coming. It sounded like you had some thunder down there at your house, Catch.
Lots of rain in the Woodlands.
Yeah, well, it's weird. We're so used from the rain coming from the north and northwest. It's coming up at us now from the southeast. So we'll see if it makes it up here to the Austin area in the Hill Country. We can certainly use it, especially over the Highland Lakes, because as you know, I'm obsessed with Lake Travis getting up 12 feet so I can put my damn boat in again.
What are the lake levels at Travis right now?
We're at 48%. I think it's down at 6. It needs to get up to like 6. It needs to get up to 650. I think it's down at 638.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 681's full. I think someone will call me out on that, but it's pretty.
I can
close.
remember it being over 700.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I think they say if it gets much over 700, it goes over the top of that dam. It goes over the top of the dam. But yeah. So yeah, we need the rain. Lake Travis, yes, back to 681 was what Kirk Jones says. That's what we need. So let's bring on the rain. Let's have I don't want Lano to flood too bad, but maybe if they could flood just a little bit and let some of those dams out for us.
I like that Alex, we can't really go 2 or 3 weeks without Alex asking somebody for something on the show. And today he's asking for all of us by asking for rain.
Yeah.
Attaboy, Alex. What about you, Anwar?
Alex is our inspiration. Like I mocked and laughed at Alex until I saw it work, and then I'm like, "That's what I got to do." So anytime, we were the beneficiaries of a steak dinner in Houston for that. One of the better dinners I've had. I'm not going to lie. He doesn't work there anymore, by the way, Catch.
It was still good.
It was still good, but I wish he worked there though.
Gave away too many free steak dinners, bro.
We pumped it up. I will lose 90% of people with this. What I'm about to say, since my kid is now playing soccer and we're getting into this whole soccer world, I have been watching a lot of soccer on television. And I'm in hunt for a favorite team. I'm in hunt for a favorite team right now. Outside of Austin FC, I have that. I like Liverpool. Could catch his team, but I saw Newcastle over the weekend, and they lost to Arsenal. But Newcastle seemed really intriguing to me. So if you've got a team for me, and Man City seems like too much of an easy choice because they're too good. So I don't want to do a bandwagon thing. That Holland guy is pretty damn good. Yeah, let me know who is the Premier League team that I need to follow. That's my parting shot. I need help as a newbie you need to tell me this is your team, Onward. That's the team that you're watching.
I'm not okay with anything but Man City because it's not even a real football team. Like there's no real history there.
Yeah,
they fake their finances so that they can be eligible. It's
is that one of the Stan Kroenke owns? Or?
No, he's Arsenal.
Oh, okay.
Like I can live with anything, man. And Man City would feel like you being a Lakers or like being a Warriors fan today. It's like,
but you know what? When I went to England, I actually went to a Man City game though.
I know. Who'd they play?
Sunderland, I believe.
You can't be a Sunderland fan. Actually, you could. But boy, that's a chore. They're not even in the Premier League, so
yeah, I don't think they are anymore.
You'd have some problems. Jason, parting shots.
Yeah, I saw a couple super chats. Someone asked about there's that one, and then
Go Fit Newcastle. Okay.
Someone asked about Sooner Scoop leaving.
Again, though, Newcastle's owned by a state. Like, don't pick somebody who's got unlimited funds to buy their way to whatever levels they get to. Sorry, mini rant over.
Like my Yankees, who are in last place right now. Yeah.
It's like being a Yankees fan. Talk about Sooner Scoop leaving Rivals.
I'll just say, I'll jump in on that. Those guys left after a long time, and but Rivals really replaced them with some really good guys. I met them and saw them at the Rivals camp on Sunday, and those guys have been around for a while. The OU Insider, they do really good work. I'm going to miss the Sooner Scoop guys. I mean, I consider those guys friends, but in terms of content and relationships and sharing information. Rivals really brought in a good group of Oklahoma reporters. So we'll be working closely with those OU insider guys moving forward. My parting shot, I mentioned the Rivals camp. I was up there on Sunday, and the big news out of that is Michael Fasusi, the offensive lineman, 2025 offensive lineman. Texas has been working hard to get that kid on campus for a long time. He is visiting this Friday. Told me he's looking forward. He's coming with his family, looking forward to meeting the coaching staff, Kyle Flood, Coach Sark. I think Texas needs to knock that one out of the park this weekend because I think Oklahoma, he hasn't said it. He claims he's pretty open, but just talking to him, he sure seems to talk more about Oklahoma than anybody else. So look for Texas to try to make a move on Michael Fasusi this weekend. And then my last part of my parting shot, I don't know if y'all even remember, I mentioned it a couple months ago, how about my buddy was insisting on going to Vegas with me for my 50th birthday with me and my wife. And I said, no. So I'm going back to Vegas. I'll be filing my war room from Vegas tomorrow.
Nice.
Jason Howell will be joining us in Vegas. Homer Catch, you know Homer, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, so a bunch of us all turned. Homer didn't, but a bunch of other buddies who all turned 50 within the last 3 or 4 months. So we're gonna make a quick 48-hour jaunt out to Vegas. So I'll be filing my war room from Vegas. So Catch, be ready to give it a good proofing tomorrow night.
Shout out to Shelly, Homer's wife. I will never forget because my birthday is like in a week. And it had to have been like 20, 25 years ago. That's how long Jason and I and some of his relationship with Homer going back even further. On my birthday one year, we went to Tinseltown Movie Theater. Jason and I think we're going to go. And then at the last minute, we invited Homer and Shelly. And Shelly showed up on my birthday and gave me a flower.
Yeah.
And it was like the only time anybody's ever given me a flower on my birthday. So
good people, Shelly and Homer. Truth be told, I'm going to write my war room tonight and tomorrow, so you'll have it. You'll have it before I get to Vegas, but it'll be getting filed from Vegas. Yes.
I like that people are lobbying for you to become a fan of their team. I'm actually going to meet tomorrow a Liverpool friend of mine who lives in Singapore. He is the Singapore. He's the president of the Liverpool fan club in Singapore. And if I'm not mistaken, he is the CFO of One Fighting, which is kind of the Asian UFC, although they have been competing in Texas or in the US a lot more recently. He's actually coming into town to scout all the various arenas in the state. Houston. He's going to the Cedar Park Center to see if that might be a good place for a One Fighting championship deal. So, yeah, onward. The thing that you will learn is that you will become even more international the moment you do pick your team. Because, like, I've got friends literally all over the globe, all because of my newfound soccer addiction that exists.
Well, there's a strong Jay. First of all, Jay the activist. Someone said Jay is he the new El Presidente with the FU money because he was just like, I'm getting my comments up. he was strong on Newcastle for me though. So
yeah, the thing that he's doing, Anwar, is that it's $5 a pop.
Yeah.
So he's not going super cheap, but he's not using it all in one big shot either. He's kind of, instead of nickel and diming us, he's been giving us $50 in the form of $5, and he keeps on making us. He keeps on jumping in. It's a good lesson for everybody. You can become a massive part of the show. Trickle that $5 at a time in, just like Jay. My parting shot. I hate to take it down a notch, but I do want to take a moment to pass on my condolences to the family of Lance Blanks, all of his friends, people, really the Longhorn Nation, and all the teams that he was affiliated with over the years, being drafted by the Detroit Pistons, being a part of that Bad Boys team at the very end of their title run. And I think he was drafted the year after they won their last title. I had Lance Blanks on my radio show all the time. And the cool thing about Lance, it was like Lance is a GM of an NBA team, but he loved his Longhorns. And I could send him a message via text at any point. It always felt like he was like, sure. As like he never turned me down that I can remember. And he was always down for a really good conversation. He was just a really, really good guy. And what's unique about Lance Blanks, and I wrote about this over at orangebloods.com, but he's part of a basketball team in that BMW team from 89-90 under Tom Penders with Travis Mays and Joey Wright, where they made me interested in Texas. I don't know if there's an orangebloods.com. I mean, there would be a Texas site in the rivals, but I don't know that it wouldn't be run by me had it not been, I think, for the basketball team that he was a part of that really turned me on to paying attention to University of Texas athletics beyond hating University of Texas athletics. Having been a Baylor fan for so long, having grown up in Waco, I moved to Austin, and that BMW team just won my heart over. And 4 years later, I'm a student at the University of Texas. Like, it happened really quickly, and I don't know that it does without that happening. I always resisted as a kid, Jason, Texas football, but for that team, like, cracked the doors down and made it possible because that tournament run that they had was so special. The Lance dance against Xavier, that the Longhorns did that again this year in the same round and get to the Elite Eight. And the Lance dance was kind of brought back to the forefront. To see Lance, and it's been confirmed that he committed suicide, to see that happen is absolutely heartbreaking, because I don't know that that guy knows how many lives he really touched. And I read an article over at ESPN.com today. It's on Orange Bloods. I tweeted about it. His daughter, one of his three daughters, I think his oldest daughter, wrote such an amazing piece, kind of sorting through her feelings of losing her father, that when it was over with, I was convinced she was a professional writer. Like, she didn't just write that. And I was like, she's got to be a pro. And it turns out she is in the industry. She does produce content. She is a bit of an artist, if you will. So it made total sense that she was able to do that. It's an amazing read. Give it a read. It's worth your time, maybe 15 minutes today. And call somebody that you love, that you think that might need a phone call. Because if anything, the Lance Blank situation from last week is a reminder that you can't tell people enough how much they mean to you, how much you care about them. You never know what's going through someone's head. You never know what they're going through, because maybe they're not talking about it. And if you're a guy, we oftentimes have a hard time talking to other guys about these kinds of things. Crack down that wall, break down that wall, because there will be a lot of people in Lance Blanks' life who will, for the rest of their days, wonder, what if you make one more phone call? What if you send an email? What if you do one more thing? It's a tough game to play. Let's be on the front foot on something like this. Let's make those calls before they're ever needed to be made. Call someone today. Call 2 people today. Call 3 people today. Reconnect with somebody. Let them know that you're thinking about them. Set up a lunch. Put something on the books. Be more involved, because it's our loss that Lance Blanks is no longer with us. And it's a shame, really, knowing that it ended for him the way that it did, and to see all of the love and outpouring of support that he had after the fact. It's just one of the devastating elements of such a thing. And if we can prevent that, let's do everything that we can to do absolutely that. For myself, for Anwar Richardson, Alex, Jason, do us a solid. Like this video, subscribe to the page, notifications, all the whistles and bells. We would love that. Appreciate that from you. Until next week, we will do it onward tomorrow on The Drunk Uncle. But for the Modcast, we'll see you next week. You guys have a great rest of the week, and let's get some rain.